Hello and welcome to Country Life Simple. I just got home from work. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon and I have run out of bread this morning. I ate my last bit of bread for breakfast, so I need to make a new one, and I thought I'll take you on the journey to show you how I make bread with the sourdough starter I prepared. So I think you all might remember Otto, my sourdough starter, out of the last video, and I want to take the opportunity to welcome all of my new subscribers. Welcome to Country Life Simple. I'm really excited to see you here, and I'm really glad you did like the video and an easy way of how to maintain a sourdough starter. So this is how my sourdough starter looks like. I just took it out of the fridge. It's still icy cold and it's pretty solid, as you can see. So just as a recap, in the last video I showed you how I start a starter basically by mixing water, yogurt and rye flour in my case, because I like rye bread, but you can use any flour, whatever you prefer. And tomorrow I want to make a, what am I going to make? I'm going to make a rye bread, a mixed rye bread with some wheat. So yeah, a little bit of a mixture. And I'm going to use Otto for this. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. So now I'm going to do my Predo. And the recipe calls for 265 grams of rye flour. Yeah, so I'm making a Predo, which is a mixture of flour, water, and starter. So all of my recipes, they're mainly German recipes, and they're very different to some of the American recipes. American recipes usually, a lot of American recipes I've seen, they use a lot of starter, but they don't do the Predo. So I'm doing my Predo, which is basically like feeding your starter, but you make it for your specific bread. So this one is 265 grams of rye flour and 265 grams of water. And then I add 5 grams of Otto, of my starter. So most of my recipes only use like a tiny amount, like 5 or 10 grams or something. So this here, see how much that is? Nothing. Too much. It really is like Play-Doh. 5 grams. So this is my starter for my bread tomorrow, or my Predo. So I'm just going to mix this up. And because, like normally when you would feed your bread, normally when you would feed your starter, you would add flour and water in equal amounts. And that's how you feed your culture. So with this, you just add a little bit of culture to your recipe, I guess, to your flour and water. Like I said, equal amounts. And most of my recipes are like, it's a bit less. It's 100 grams of flour, 100 grams of water. This one is a bit of a bit bigger bread by the look of it, because it does ask for, yeah, no, it's not really. So yeah, most recipes ask for equal amounts of flour and water to be added with a little bit of starter. And so this is how it looks like. It's not really straight in here, but yeah, you sort of see. And tomorrow this will have nearly doubled in size. And Otto, yeah, I just took like a tiny little bit out, goes back in the fridge till next week. Goodbye, Otto. It's now 18 hours later. Et voila! Here is my Predo. And that was, I'm just checking the recipe, it was 5 grams of my starter with 265 grams of rye flour and 265 grams of water. So with the methodology I use, what you basically just need to do is mix equal parts of flour and water together with some of your starter. And it's usually, it depends on the recipe, but I usually use between 5 and 10 grams of the starter. I mix that up. I leave it overnight. So normally you're supposed to leave it for about 12 to 18 hours. It depends on the temperature. It is quite warm. It's central Queensland. We probably have, I don't know, around 17, 18 degrees during the night. I did have this in the oven during the night, but the oven was turned off, so it wasn't on. It was just off. You see some nice big bubbles in here, and yeah, it has risen a fair bit. It has the typical sourdough smell, and we're now making a bread with this. So 340 grams of rye flour, 150 grams of wheat flour. I'm using baker's flour. 16 grams of salt. 160 grams of warm water. I also add the entire starter Predo. See? After 5 minutes of kneading this, I'm going to cover it for 45 minutes and let it rest. So the other day I was trying to make my bread and I figured out I had some issues with my oven. The bread was dark on the outside, but on the inside it wasn't cooked properly. I thought I did something wrong with the recipe, but one of them baked something, put the thermometer inside the oven, and it turned out that the temperature actually didn't go above 150 degrees. I cleaned the oven and I found out that hubby actually air fried some fish and chip takeaway, including the paper box it was in. So I'm not sure if the oven is stuffed up now, but I was just cooking some sausages on the barbecue, so I thought I'm gonna give it a go to bake it on the Weber. All right, this is 250 degrees. I've put my Brunswick bakers in here and hope that the bread won't burn at the bottom. Oh, this is very hot. I did put some flour at the bottom. I'm now taking my bread. All right, so my recipe calls for carefully 340 grams of rye flour. And this is a bread made with rye and wheat flour. Put the lid back on. Close that lid. Alright, so the total bake time is 65 minutes. I had it 10 minutes on 250 degrees and then 40 minutes on 205. And now I'm just taking the lid off for the last 10 minutes. Ready? Oh, wow. Oh my God, that looks good. This is actually hard to put the lid back on. That's how good it looks. Okay, time is over. I don't even know if you can see this properly. Look at that. I have just made my decision what sort of oven I'm gonna get. Really happy. It's nice and crispy. Ooh, very hot. All right. Looks good. Yummy. So you probably have found my channel to try and find an easy way to make sourdough bread. In my last video I showed you a quite easy and successful, well for me at least, and I know for many others as well, successful method to make your sourdough starter. And I just want to sort of recap a few areas of consideration if your bread doesn't sort of turn out as great as you would like to. So the first one is your starter. Your starter still needs to be active. So in the evening before you want to bake your, like the night before you want to bake your bread, if you take some of your starter out and add some flour and some water and let it go overnight, that is like feeding your starter, but obviously you're just feeding a portion of your starter and you're just doing it right then and there when you actually want to use it. When you have that mixture of fresh flour, water and your starter, it needs to have increased in size by the next morning. If it hasn't, your starter isn't active enough. Potentially your flour isn't great. So I used to, when I made white bread, I sometimes use the plain white flour from Aldi, and it does work out if I just make a plain white bread. But if I need a bit of extra oomph, if I take like a baker's flour, it has a much better result. So it could be your flour, it could be your starter. You will see that if it doesn't rise, it's your starter. Add a raisin or some caraway seeds or a little bit of yogurt or buttermilk, something with like active cultures in it. Mix it all up, let it live. Once you know your starter is alive, mix all your ingredients together depending on your recipe. Let them rest for about an hour. Then shape your bread, let it rest again, and I'm not going to give you time because it depends on so many factors: the size of your loaf, the warmth and the humidity of your kitchen on that day. So if I bake in winter, like I have in the last few months, I normally let my bread rest for another hour and a half sometimes. In summer, my bread sometimes only rests for like 10-15 minutes, and then it's ready to go because it's hot in here and it's humid. And then you bake it. If your oven isn't right, or you might not be sure if your oven is right, get an oven thermometer. Just check the temperature of your oven. My old oven, 90 centimeter freestanding oven, there was always some hot air coming out. And when I checked the temperature, even though it said like the maximum was 230 degrees, it barely reached 200 degrees. And my little oven, when I baked the same loaf a couple of days ago, and it didn't work out in my little oven, I checked the temperature, it didn't go over 150, but it turned dark on the outside and it was rare in the inside. Just how I like my steak, but not my bread. So I baked it on the barbecue. Was the temperature exact? No, it wasn't. It was, sort of accurate. It was approximately there. I just had to check it to make sure it doesn't burn. But it's easy. And that's what I like about my method. I like it because it's easy. I have a very busy schedule. I work. I don't have time to come back to the bread every half hour and shape it and stretch and fold it. You can do cold fermentation overnight in the fridge, but I prepare the starter the night before. Then I mix all of my ingredients up in the morning, and then I basically bake. I bake in the morning most of the time. If I do want to bake in the evening, I probably would mix up my starter early in the morning when I get up, and then do the rest in the evening and bake my bread that way. But yeah, I remember when I first started and looked at some of these recipes, and sort of actual work time of the recipe might have only been like an hour or so, but the time it took to prepare your starter and do this and do that, it took so long, and I don't have that time, and I don't have that time when I need to have that time. I can't prepare the dough and have it sit there, and then I have to go back 30 minutes later and fold it again and again and again because I'm at work. I just can't do this. So for me, this works. I have tried a few recipes and the majority of them have worked. Sometimes it's just the recipe. The recipe is just not me. It's not my kind of bread. I do know a lot of the American recipes, they call for like a cup of starter. I have never ever used a cup of starter, but then again, my starter is so dense and so powerful that this small little teaspoon, when 5 grams, that's not more than a teaspoon, totally sufficient. But I gotta prepare it the night before, but it's very little effort. Very little effort to put the starter, flour, water together, leave it, and then bake the bread in a couple of hours, done and dusted. So I'm really happy with this method, and I hope you try and give it a go and let me know in the comments what you think. If you want me to share some more recipes, I've tried a few different ones. I'm not really the white bread kind of person, so you won't see many white bread recipes. Hubby loves the white fluffy bread. For me, this is just like eating air. It's just no point. Sorry, white bread lovers, it's just not me. But if you're interested in like some seeded recipes, yeah, let me know. I have made breads with carrots and stuff like that, just to make it a bit healthier, because I do eat bread a lot. I'm German, we eat a lot of bread. So hope you like this video. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. To all of the new subscribers, welcome to the channel. I'm really glad you found me, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Give me some comments of what other content you want to see, and I'll see you next time. Bye.